We're going to talk about how we'll get this rule of thirds grid put on our cameras. So I'm going to show you two different ways, two different apps that we can use for that. So the first one is just our regular camera app. So to make sure that we have our rule of thirds grid turned on to use for composition, we'll want to click on Settings and go to Camera. And then make sure that within the Composition section that you have grid turned on. What that's going to allow you to see when you're using your camera is a chance here to see that grid superimposed over the picture. So whatever you're photographing, you can then use that rule of third grid to align that main subject at the intersection point of that grid while you take the picture, just like that. So again, the key for this rule of composition is that we're getting in and not having something centered. So like a picture of me, for example, if I'm right in the middle, that's not using the rule of thirds, even though, it's like using the center of that box, okay? Instead, I'd want to push myself off to the side like this. Even if I'm going over two of the intersection points, that would be okay. But if I am right in the middle, that's not the rule of thirds. Okay, it's going off to the side, one side or the other, or backing it up a little bit and just being on one of the points of intersection. Usually you'd want to have like the eye of the person be right at the intersection point if you're doing a portrait. Okay, so that's the first way to turn on the rule of thirds grid, and that's just using the regular camera app. So if we're using Lightroom to take our pictures, we'll go into the camera. You see I already have the grid turned on. I'm going to flip to this little three dot on the top here. And there's a lot of options up here that maybe you've played around with, maybe you haven't. But the one that's right in the middle is the grid. And you can turn the grid off, so then you don't have anything. You can segment the screen up into fourths. So you've got like 4 different boxes on there. That's a good way if you want to like center something in the middle and you want to make sure it's in the middle. But the rule of thirds grid is this middle option. Well, I guess just to the right of the middle. And that turns that grid on. So I'm going to flip to kind of a horizontal view here again. Similar picture to what I had with the regular camera app. Click it right there. If you're in automatic, you can still have the grid on, okay? But in professional, that's what you'll be using to have a little bit more control over things that you're photographing. Okay, so rule of thirds grid, super useful. In the end, you don't see the grid on top of the picture. It's all about just helping to frame in something and use this compositional technique to make your pictures a little bit more interesting. Great, so that's how you do it. And let's start using that when we're taking our pictures to create a little bit more of a nice composition.